In the book of Job, we have the most polite argument I've ever seen. Here's these people who are talking for probably had to have been a few hours at least of discourse. And I was telling my husband, have you noticed that they just all let everybody else finish their thought? No one's interrupting each other. It was just the most polite, put down by Job's friends. And as they're having this argument, these are very intellectual people. They have a lot of knowledge. They know about the constellations. They know about things that we're finding out now about like the rivers and the deep under the oceans. And there's just, as you read through, it sounds, like part of it is poetic, but like as you go, there's things that we're scientifically still discovering that they knew. And these are not boom boom people. Job was not just anyone. God calls him perfect. Like, he's obviously perfect in terms of righteousness, but everything about Job, if you look at the numbers, is 10. It's perfection. Let's see. He has 7 sons and 3 daughters. 10. He has 7,000 sheep and 3,000 camels. 10. He has 500 yoke of oxen and 500 donkeys. 10. It's like 10, 10, 10. And he's perfect. So you have the cream of the crop of riches, of wisdom, of understanding. Job's as good as it gets at that time. And as they're talking through, they're incredibly wise. But at the very end, after they see God in the whirlwind, after they just have this experience with him, they go from like these intellectuals, and Job goes from this perfect man to say, I've heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Therefore I abhor myself, and I repent in dust and ashes. Abhor is like the strongest word for hate. To say like, I absolutely despise and hate everything about me. When he's comparing himself to God, as opposed to comparing himself to his peers or his intellect or his wisdom to his friends. It goes from like, I'm just a worm on the dust the moment you're face to face to the holiness of God. And we see the same thing happening when Isaiah has this vision of God. He goes from, he was not a nobody. I think he worked in the courts, and he knew the king. He obviously was not, a lowly man. But like, his first reaction seeing the glory of God was like, woe is me, I am undone. I'm like disintegrated. I'm a man of unclean lips, and I dwell among people of unclean lips. And just the reaction of being in the presence of God in that way is just like undoneness. And here we go in Luke 18. And it talks about the Pharisee and the tax collector. They're going to pray. And the Pharisee's going in there, and he's doing the comparison to others. Like, oh, I'm not like the unjust. I'm not like the adulterers and even this tax collector or the extortioners. And he's doing a whole of like, and I do this. And he's comparing himself to others. And if we're going to compare ourselves to others, there's always a worse sinner than us. So we're always in the clear. But when you come face to face with God and not a comparison with others, when you see God as opposed to just hearing about God, there's no comparing yourself to others and thinking you're standing up straight. Even John in the presence, and he walked with Jesus, he was his disciples, he leaned his head on his chest, like they're incredibly close. And when he sees Jesus in his glory, he just falls down like dead. There's this difference of us going and hearing about God in church, or us going and taking the word and hearing about him by reading in this intellectual way of gathering knowledge. But there's a difference between that and going in his presence or going in church and being able to see God, at least with our spiritual eyes. And if we were to see God, we're just undone. We are repenting. We're like Isaiah to say like, woe is me, I'm a man of unclean lips. I am undone. And as I'm thinking about this, we hear a lot about God. We put him in boxes. We hear more. We gather this knowledge, and we're wiser. But Ecclesiastes says that knowledge puffs up. And to some extent, we become puffed up of what we know about God. But do we know God? Have we seen God? Have we had that interaction, that reaction with Him? We're faced with the gloriness of God. We're like Job to say, like, I've heard about you, but now that I see you, I have no words. I just abhor myself and I repent in dust and ashes. And that's what we're missing today. We're missing people who have seen God. We're missing people who know God in the secret place. We're missing people who get their daily food, who get their water and their living substance in the presence of God from Him, knowing and seeing God. So my prayer today for myself and for you is that we stop hearing about God and that we know Him. When Moses said, Lord, show me your face, God put him in a rock, and he had to cover him with his hand that he would not die in his presence. And we have lost that sense of fear of the Lord. I don't know when and how it happened, but we've reached these places of, we just don't have the fear of God. We don't have the awe of that holiness of God. Our churches are bookshops and coffee shops, or there's just something commercial and something earthly and fleshly and plastic and physical, and it's this image of holiness. But I don't know that we see God anymore. To get to that place where we just fall before God undone. And it's my prayer for my own life, and it's my prayer for my church, and it's my prayer for all of the churches, is that God would work in such a mighty way that we would see Him in the way that Isaiah saw Him, in the way that Job saw Him, and Moses, that He would show us His glory, that He would once again give us that awe, that fear of the Lord, that we would just become undone before Him, that we would pour out our hearts and souls before Him as these men have. And that is the desire of my heart. And I know that God will give me the desires of my heart. The word says, I know it in Romanian, but like let the Lord be your delight, and He will give you the desires of your heart. And friends, if the Lord is your delight, what is the desire of your heart? Is it not the Lord? And I pray today that you will go and just seek His face, seek His presence, go in that secret room and don't come out until you have what you're looking for. It's time to seek His face, to know Him. I want to know Him like that. Do you want to know Him? We find that in the secret place, not online.